and welcome to our final episode of this year's podcast series. We hope you all enjoyed this educational journey my committee and I underwent, interviewing distinguished guests, both professors and external specialists. Joining me today is Theodora and Ben, and today we'll be reflecting on our experiences over these past 4 months doing the podcast. And yes, I've learned a lot these past couple of months, especially when interviewing the external guests and like preparing for the interviews. It was kind of nerve-wracking, wasn't it?
Yeah. How
A
was
lot.
it trying to, I think for contacting our lecturers, it was
Mhm.
one thing because we already knew them, we already had some sort of relationship. But what was it like trying to get people outside of Brooks on board with doing something like this?
Yeah, so luckily with Dr. Alexander Green, I had actually went on work experience at the John Radcliffe with him.
Right,
So
yeah.
I already knew him from way back then. And lovely, lovely guy. And that was an amazing week really to learn a lot, especially it was really opening the patient contact that week. And funny story with Julie Woods, I didn't actually know Julie all that well. Actually, I didn't know her at all. And it was through a friend of hers who I met when dog walking, and she mentioned about Julie and that she was a Brooks alumni and she did human biology and was in academia, and I managed to
Yeah.
contact her and we kind of went from there. So it wasn't too nerve-wracking, but definitely, they're very high esteemed figures. I mean, Julie's the head of
Yeah.
commercial sales for Thermo Fisher. It's one of the biggest pharma, if not the biggest pharma company up there with like Biorad in the world, like especially
Yeah.
with equipment and like PCR machines and everything, even cell culture. Like I'm doing my lab placement now, and like almost every box I open has the brand Thermo Fisher on it. So it's
Wow.
and that's out like an Oxford University lab, so it's top notch stuff. So it's quite
Yeah.
impressive. But um, one reoccurring theme which I saw definitely, especially when talking with our professors as well, was how driven they were. Like how it was crazy how much they went through, like how much hard work. Like Victor came from Mexico on like three different scholarships, and also John came over from Canada from overseas. And I just find that astounding that they would go through such lengths. I mean, it was to Oxford and Cambridge, which is best in the
Yeah.
world, but still to put everything on the line for their absolute love for science and to try and go for the top. I find that really cool.
Yeah.
Whereas you, Luca, decided to go to uni in the same city you already lived in.
Yeah, I know. In retrospect, it's always good. I mean, who would have thought that with everything that's going on now, that maybe living at home was the best, would have been a reasonable choice. But no, I mean,
Yeah.
the reason why I chose Oxford and Oxford Brooks, I mean, Oxford Brooks is still good. Come on, we gotta cut
It is a
ourselves
good
some.
uni.
Yeah, it's a fantastic university,
It's
especially
true.
our microscopy department. I mean, Todora, you were there with John Runyons and with his work in the microscopy. But being in such an academic city, I think I didn't want to take that for granted living here for the last 17 years. So, Todora, what was kind of the things you've learned throughout the podcast?
One thing that really, it was the biggest skill that I learned has been video editing,
Hmm.
audio editing,
Yep.
doing all of the YouTube and all that kind of stuff. I'd never done anything like this before,
Mm.
especially the audio editing. Luca, you know how like specific
Yeah.
we would try to get all the ums and ahs out, and it was a bit like I was speed running
Hmm.
the skill, like
Yeah, it was definitely
level
something.
up
Yeah,
from
it
level
was
0
definitely
to level
something.
100.
It was definitely something new. I did a lot of video editing this past 4 months. I've
Yeah,
done a lot, as you know as well, and Ben as well. To be fair, Ben, you managed to edit your
Did a couple bits,
Andrews.
but
Yeah, your Andrew
yeah.
interview. That was really good. And yeah, the end. Once you get the hang of editing, it's good fun. But at the start, it was very very long. But
I was just like, I had no idea how to set
mm,
up a proper YouTube channel. I had no
no,
idea
no,
about the analytics, none of that. And it was just like,
no,
I
it was
don't know
good.
what I'm doing.
No, exactly, and it was good fun. And it was actually quite nice to listen back to the interview because sometimes there was some bits where, especially when I was, well, no, not when I was conducting the interview, but when Ben was interviewing Andrews, when you interviewed Runyons, I wasn't there. I didn't listen to the talk,
Yeah,
so it was nice to hear it bit by bit. I mean, I posted it anyway on YouTube, so I was able to listen to it then. But it's
yeah,
still not. It's still nice to see the full footage, and no, it was nice, and also to see the interaction, I guess, also between, you know, us to the committee and the guests as well. It was a very nice balance as well. It was really nice, and the guests were
Yeah.
really really open and were so well. We try to be as you know,
Oh my gosh.
hospital, yeah, to be as, to give as good hospitality as we could. But you know, the
Do you
amount of
guys do you remember how nervous we were on the first ever
oh, I remember.
recording?
Were you there for the Dave Carter one?
Luca,
No.
Luca, didn't you do the opening like 5 times?
Yeah, I did the opening. I think I did the opening three
Oh
times
my
for this one.
gosh.
So something's not changed. So
That's right, it's improved. It was only a couple of times this time.
yeah, I
It
remember.
wasn't as much as before.
No, it wasn't as much as before. No, I remember I was really nervous with the Dave Carter interview as well. Also because he's a
Yeah.
really, really important professor. Unfortunately, left.
Mm.
He's still alive. He hasn't left us in that way, but he's left Brooks. So it came out wrong. But it was really interesting to then to hear him talk about non-coding. I had no
Yeah.
idea the applications, like unbelievable, like the amount of future possibilities, especially in the pharma development, which is really, really cool.
Mm.
Because I thought it was still quite early days and it wasn't a very unexplored area. But I didn't know how involved Dave was in drug development as well. And now he's doing that new um, biochemistry, or I think it was biochemical. No, that's the same thing. Um, job at this. I don't know where it is. He never mentioned the name, but we wished him all the best, and hopefully we'll hear back from him soon. And yeah, I mean the other thing, which well, Ben, what did you find more
I
interesting?
mean, I found with like, I mean, especially John Lee's, because I'm doing him for my dissertation.
Mm,
Doing my dissertation with him, so
yeah,
it was good to listen to that and sort of get an idea of what I would be doing, sort of thing. Get an idea of the applications for what I'm going to do for that, but also
yeah,
just in general look at what's going on around us with the university lecturers, see what the university's
yeah,
actually doing, what they, because I mean with the lecturers you don't really get to know what they actually do apart from the lectures most of the time.
yeah.
So it's
That
quite
was
interesting to see what else they actually do in the job.
absolutely. I think that was one of the main ideas we have for inviting our professors, because a lot of times you see them in the lecture theaters, or you see them just for that 1 day lab
Yeah,
session, and
Yeah.
you don't really get to sit down and say like, oh, doctor, what's your work, what's your research, what's your passion. Like, I mean, yes, they have an amazing job of teaching us. I mean, the idea of knowledge is when you gain knowledge. That's kind of like the first step to wisdom. That's what we're doing now as students. We're gaining, we're eating away books, we're trying to gain this wisdom, but being able to share it and to pass down, I think that's really the first step to humanity, I guess. If we didn't have our professors, if we didn't have teachers, I mean, where would we be today? I mean, what's the use of? I mean, yes, knowledge is power in a way, but I think being able to pass it down is it's a very noble thing to do. Because I think it also
yeah,
takes a lot of humility as well. Because I think some people maybe not that they want to be selfish, but they put a lot of time and effort in gaining that. So you can't
You
be ever
make some
thankful
very good
enough.
points.
I
yeah. But
know,
also it
You're
yeah.
so
shows.
philosophical.
No, it's
Yeah,
not.
Such a
literally
philosopher.
very deep.
Oh,
No, it's
Also
very.
just
okay.
shows the range of stuff we can do with our biomed
Yeah,
degree.
I mean, oh,
If you have been watching regularly, you may have noticed that we were trying to include two reoccurring questions to our guests. The first being what piece of advice we would give to aspiring scientists, and the second is who they would invite for dinner. Ben, who was your favorite guest that somebody invited?
Well, I think it was pretty interesting with Dave Carter suggesting Elon Musk because he's
that was
obviously cutting edge of sort of space travel at the moment, and just Tesla has got a lot going on in
Yeah.
general,
could you
and
imagine
it's just pretty interesting. It would definitely be a good discussion to have with him about
yeah.
what he wants, and I mean, he's going to say some controversial stuff, and I think it would just be pretty interesting.
You might
Pretty
get some
exciting.
trading advice from him as well at the
Trading
same
Yeah,
time.
advice, yeah, some business
yeah.
points.
I mean, you'd expect him to pick up the check at the very least. So
If not, he can always get
you
out
know,
his flamethrower and he can burn the check. It's fine. Yeah. No, do you reckon we can have commercial? No, I think it's a little bit optimistic. Commercials, space flight within our generation. I don't know. It's
I mean,
hard to say.
I can't say enough know enough about it, to be
No,
honest.
no, let's stick in our field. We're biomedical scientists, not
I
astrophysicists.
mean,
So yeah.
Isn't Virgin Media Richard Branson trying to do something like that,
I
just
think they're
like
all
into
trying to
lower
jump on.
space?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
they're
think
all
you could
trying to-
definitely do it into lower space. I just don't think, you're not talking like, you couldn't be taking people to the moon,
No.
because space isn't
Interstellar.
as
Oh
high
gosh,
as you think.
I saw there
So I
was.
reckon, lower space, get some zero gravity. I think that might be possible for a
Mm,
commercial.
yeah, because I don't think we realize how far away the Earth is from the moon. You could fit every single planet of the solar system, I think, excluding
Yeah.
Pluto, between the Earth and the moon. They can all fit in based on their diameter. That's crazy. Like if you think about like Jupiter and Saturn, and those are like humongous planets. But
But like we said, we're not
we're
astrophysicists,
not
we're
astrophysicists. Yeah,
biologists.
we're not astronomers. Well, we could. Nah, I don't think I could do astronomy at this point.
Nah.
But what was some of like there was quite a few common ones, wasn't there?
Yeah. The
I
most
remember.
common were Sir David Attenborough and Charles Darwin. Like
Understandably,
even
yeah.
when we were prepping, we thought what the potential answers might be, it was always David Attenborough and Charles Darwin. Their impact on science
That's true.
is
Especially
immense.
like Runyon's or John Lee's, who were,
Yeah.
John Lee, they did bioinformatics, and like Runyon's teaches us genetics. Like,
Yeah.
they're big fans of Darwin,
Big
and
fan.
Andrew with molecular biology, I guess, with Attenborough. I remember Andrew was saying like he's just a legend, which he is. I mean, it's amazing, like the amount of work and how educative. I mean, it's just Attenborough's probably inspired so many people our age to then pursue like biological sciences or biology. I mean, I'm more on like the medical route, and it was funny when listening, especially with Alexander Green. I was expecting this big medical figure, and it was really humbling to hear him invite back again his mentor for he was learning
Yeah.
neurosurgery. I thought that was really not, I guess it's sweet. I don't want to sound condescending, but it was very sweet, because you would have thought like this big, big superstar kind of dinner guest, but it was just like, no, I really admire my mentor because it's where I am today, especially hearing it from
Yeah.
a fellow medic, and I hope to be, a medic one day and to be a doctor. That kind of put me like, maybe it's the people who you're working right next to who can be your big heroes as well. But
Speaking of you wanting to be a medic, Luca, and dinner guests, who would you have invited for dinner?
I mean, well, I'm in the same train with Ben as well. We both are aspiring medics. Fingers crossed we'll make it. I'm sure we will. We'll be all right. Um, I mean, I had thought about this for a long time. I mean, since we wanted to start the podcast, I wanted to have a question or two. Well, eventually we had two questions, lucky us, where each episode we could ask each guest, and then looking back on our final episode, which we're here today,
Like we are
can
today.
link every single episode together or kind of has a theme to it. And because we had so much diversity in the fields, like we had Ariel Leonardo, who instructs and teaches nursing at the John Radcliffe and the University Hospital, to our professors in genetics and in microscopy. Like it's really wide range. So it was kind of tricky. And I was just thinking at the same time, not just on the field, but also as a person. Like it says a lot about the person, especially who they admire and how that reflects on them. So my one is his name is Saint Giuseppe Moscati, not first name Saint, first name Giuseppe, but he was an Italian doctor in the early of 20th century, based in Naples, and he was really the man when I started reading more of his biography and more of his story, which made me have this vocation to medicine, what made me pursue this path. Then by all means, this biomedical science degree is fantastic because not only when I hope to go into medicine, I will study, anatomy and physiology and how to help patients, but understanding the fundamental science through this biomedical science degree, that's something not taken lightly. And it's just more knowledge which can eventually help the patient. Like it's not, understanding what's going down molecularly or in the cells can hopefully make me a better doctor, I hope one day. And Moscati, other than being the top of his class and graduating and he wasn't a big Nobel Prize superstar, but what he did have was just the absolute love and devotion to the patient. And he would say that the the cry out for help from the patient in pain was also a cry from the soul, and that really moved me because he saw something beyond just this, the disease or the diagnosis. He saw the person, and I think that's
Yeah.
something which doctors nowadays they do really use that, and that was such a noble thing to have. And I started reading more and found out he was one of the first doctors in Italy to actually start curing or treating patients with diabetes with insulin. So it was kind of amazing that he had this scientific background as well. And I mean, he came from a very wealthy family. So he came from a family, his father was a judge of Naples. And at the time, Naples was a very big and still is a very big port city. So a very wealthy family. And when he got inherited, most of the family wealth, he sold everything. He sold everything in order to give back to the poor of Naples because the big epidemic of cholera had hit as well. And there was just malnutrition, and the patients couldn't afford healthcare. And he would sell these amazing paintings. Like he had this big apartment in the center of Naples, and he sold everything. He died a poor man. And it's amazing because I went to Naples a few years ago to visit the church where he's buried. It's now a pilgrimage. And you would walk around Naples, and you see, these grandmas or these, elderly people from the First World War, second, not so much the second. And they would tell you these stories of Moscati, none without a doubt treating someone from their family from when maybe they were very little, and remembering him walking at 4 or 5 a.m. in the streets with this big can of milk because to give milk to the children so they could have enough calcium and everything. And that's the kind of doctor I want to be. I want to be a doctor, for everyone, really. So that was my kind of, so that when I was making this podcast, he came straight to my mind because that is the most inspirational figure. But who would your guys dinner guest be?
And do you want to go first or should I?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. Well, I mean, originally in the earlier podcast, I put Will Hughes is what for football player. But as Luca just said, who you pick shows a great deal about the person. So I feel like I have to choose someone a bit more science related.
I mean, if I had to choose, let's say someone a little bit more modern day, like let's say non-scientific, I'd probably choose like, who's a good guitarist? One of my favorite guitarists. Either like a Mark Knopfler or from Dire Straits, or like a Bono from U2. I'm a massive like 80s rock fan, so it's okay.
My more science related one is pretty Alexander Fleming, just for, I mean, obviously penicillin's the obvious thing that he did. I mean, part of it was an accident, a coincidence. They didn't do his washing up, but he still had the skill to identify it when he got back from his holiday. But also, not only that, he also identified the lysosome in 1923.
Was that him?
Which for that time,
no way.
that's pretty.
That's so cool.
That's pretty good for 1923 sort of technology. And I mean, penicillin. I'm sure it took quite a while before it was usable. Obviously, it was about 1940s sometime when it was actually usable, all because of a coincidence and a melon. But
So are you hoping to find that coincidence as well if you don't do your washing up in labs as well, that you come back?
I mean,
you can find. No,
I mean, the likelihood of me doing washing up.
No,
I mean, we'll see.
It's fine. It'll be good. That could be like a good try and error. You have.
But it also does show you how it shows you how coincidences or like accidents happen, and often that's the way forwards that we because labs we test everything in the lab, but we're always so careful about everything. And sometimes when you just let something happen, it sort of it's probably not the best lesson for a scientist to take, but
No, but I think like you said, like leaving stuff more. I don't want to say dumb luck. I think it's finding.
Well, I think it's sort of a bit of both, isn't it? It's a bit of luck and a bit of.
It's making the most.
It took a lot of skill for him
luck.
to identify
it.
The
most out of it. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he did a lot of other stuff in his career as well, so he's clearly it wasn't just one.
It wasn't one thing. But...
Yeah. What about you, Theodora?
Me. Both of you have these like well-known people, and all I want to, the only person that I would invite science-based, kind of, would be my great-grandfather. He
No
was
way.
very known for like homemade cures for hair
Okay.
loss, for example. That was like one of his things. Like very well versed
Yeah.
in natural remedies that worked and that genuinely helped people. And I would love to just sit with him with a notebook, maybe
And
like
getting all those
10.
remedies down. Yeah.
And all of those remedies, I want all of them. And then I want to know how he found them. Like, how do you find a remedy for hair loss that works without using like modern science and just
I
like
guess it's
things
just
you find in a field?
yeah. It'll be also interesting to find out how those remedies work. I guess also as a point of view of a
Yeah,
scientist, it'll be cool if like you could analyze these remedies and maybe conduct.
exactly.
That'd be quite cool.
Luke is just worried
But
about getting bald.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Luca, I don't have the recipes for them.
I
I
know.
don't even know
Yeah. It's
where
not
to
that
look.
receding. I'm not that receding. That's not why I'm growing out my head. Don't worry. No, but no. I
But
mean,
yeah,
it's amazing how yeah. I mean, even nowadays, I think there's a little bit more of a turnaround towards more natural remedies, and I think
mm,
maybe understanding them better. It's not just alchemy. It's not just like you said. It's not just throwing a bunch of herbs together and mixing them and then hoping for the best. Like there's definitely a methodology, and it'd be also interesting how that methodology works, and maybe if we
yeah.
can adapt it or improve it with scientific method. Who knows?
I remember this was in college. I had to create my own experiment, like
Mm.
from like cloth bombs, all of it. Had to think of it. And I
Oh,
went with
from scratch.
microbiology from scratch. I didn't have a topic.
Really?
They were just like, you're going to
Oh,
be marked on how well you can find an issue and fix it.
okay.
And so
That's quite good.
I thought, what's the best way to cure, what was it? I think it was UTI.
Okay.
So I used the like pure bacteria, like that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. So I went with like cranberry juice and what was it, honey and lemon and something
Honey and
else.
lemon's always a good
Like,
one.
yeah. So it
Mm.
was based on the fact that he was really good with that. I was like, I
Yeah.
can't. I remember it didn't work very well because at the time I didn't think to change my like get fresh like cranberry juice, fresh ingredients to
Mm.
kill all of the bacteria. So it didn't work that well, but I did
Hey,
pretty
it's a
good for
learning
that.
process. What can we do?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's quite sad news to announce, but we have to come to the close of this episode and this season. It's gone very quickly. So
Yeah.
It's been a good learning experience, letting us find out a lot about basically the whole of biomedical science in general. Um, so yeah, it's definitely been a good journey to take as committee, and we hope
definitely.
that you enjoyed the journey too.
We'd like to thank everybody for joining us through YouTube, through our posts on Facebook, Spotify, just everywhere that you've watched it, you've supported us. Thank you.
And not only thank you to the listeners and to our fans, but also a big thank you to us, me upon saying thank you to my fellow committee members, to Theodora, to Ben, to Lucas, to Chloe and Priscilla, and to Caitlin, who have endlessly helped me and made this project a great success. I've been really been ever thankful. I couldn't have done it without them. So thank you again, you guys, and thank you again to
You're
everyone.
very welcome.
Also in the behind the scenes, also Arabella, she's also helped out a little bit in the behind the scenes. Not only just to our fans and committee, but thank you, a big thank you to all our guests, both from Brooks and outside. Putting the time aside to come and talk with us has been a real pleasure and an honor. And we did it all for you guys to learn, but it's also been a fantastic experience for us. We've learned so much, and we would take away so much. And reiterating what Ben said, we hope you guys enjoyed it and learned something as well. And take care, and hopefully there'll be a season 2. Who knows? All right. Fingers crossed. Until then,
Thank
keep
you.
well, stay safe, and keep learning. See you later.